But I got to start here. National news, you're seeing it play out. International situation going on. Syria, to take a step back on Sunday late, you had the president announce that the U.S. would be withdrawing troops from Syria. What does that all mean? What's happening today? You have Turkey's launching attacks over in Syria. Person I always think of when it comes to foreign policy and some international conflicts is Dakota Rudesill. You've heard him here on KFGO before. He is assistant professor at law at The Ohio State University. Joins us right now. Dakota, how you doing? Thanks for taking some time for me.
Hey, you bet. Great to be here.
Well, I know you're on a tight schedule, so let's dive right on in. What's going on? Let's start with the Kurds. People throw around this this group of individuals. I don't know that everyone necessarily understands the geography, the history of the Kurdish people.
So I think it's helpful to start with the geography and the history. So Kurdistan is a predominantly mountainous region. There's some desert there too, but mountainous mainly. It's a zone that stretches across the territory of Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. There are about 28 million people who are part of this Kurdish nation, which has never had its own independent country. They've always been part of one of these other countries. And have been treated terribly by all four of them. Just constant bloodshed or almost constant bloodshed, and just really, really terrible treatment of them, including by the Turks. And, the Turks are our nominal allies. They're part of the NATO alliance. And the Turks have been battling them in Turkey for a long time. And then since the civil wars in Iraq and Syria, the Kurds on occasion have been going across the border into those countries and going after them. It gets really complicated because the Kurds have been really close allies and friends of the United States in the Middle East, and they've been just enormously helpful to U.S. forces and the CIA and the U.S. government in providing intelligence to the United States on Saddam Hussein and the Syrian government and the Iranians. They're no friends of the Iranians. They've helped the U.S. military in a lot of ways. As some of your listeners have probably seen, estimates are that the Kurds are holding about 10,000 ISIL terrorists. It's a complex situation, but the Kurds are just a really important actor.
Well, and to that point of how important they are, how great of an ally they've been to the United States, especially in the fight against ISIS, Al-Qaeda. The list goes on. Yep. So then on Sunday, when you have the president say, look, the U.S. is drawing back, Kurds, you're essentially going to be on your own. The chatter's been, look, the Pentagon, all of them, look, they knew that if you withdraw, there's a good chance Turkey's going to attack. Dakota, that's already happening. Right now, as we speak, Turkey's attacked over there. So explain just the recent developments and what that might mean.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I think a lot of people would be sympathetic with President Trump in the sense of saying, we need to have, a better long-term strategy in the Middle East, and, we can't be there forever fighting. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But the approach that he's taken here of just kind of out of the blue at various points saying, we're getting out, we're pulling out, without kind of thinking about how that's going to happen and how our allies and friends in the region, the implications for them, that just seems impulsive. And we're really seeing the downside of that right now where, if you flip on any of the news stations, very clear the Turks now have crossed the border into Syria. They're attacking our Kurdish allies in northern Syria. Families are fleeing, and I just say, the Turks, despite being our NATO allies, have a not impressive record, meaning they have a bad record when it comes to following the law of armed conflict and protecting civilians in war. Lots of discussion of ethnic cleansing, and it's just a really bad situation for us because, as has been reported, when the president talked to the president of Turkey on Sunday, it sounds like he told Turkey not to intervene, but he also said, we're getting out, which, just looks like a green light to the Turks, right, to go into northern Syria and try to just go after the Kurds that the Turks have been battling for years. And so it just raises a lot of questions about, the United States as a reliable ally and friend and partner.
Yeah, I mean, there's that fear out there, and I think it's that type, because as you said, Dakota, that I think there is some sentiment of, look, we've been over in this region for a very long time. Can we be there forever? But you pull out the steadiness of, American troops over there, and now we're already seeing the rapid change that's had. And forgive me if this is a naive question, but the announcement was made Sunday that we're pulling out, and already here we are Wednesday, and you have this full-blown offensive by Turkey. Is that common to have that readily advancement just ready to go as Turkey has seemingly did? Or, I mean, did they know that this was going to be coming on? Do you have any insight on that?
Well, I'm not inside the government. I can't give you anything in internal, even if I knew it. But
Right.
I would just say, the Turks have regarded the Kurds as their enemy. They've called them terrorists. They've been battling the Kurds who are in Turkey for decades. And now that again, Iraq and Syria became very weak, and there were civil wars there. Now there was nothing. Now there was less stopping the Turks from going across the border and attacking the Kurds in those countries. One thing that was protecting them was the United States, because the Kurds were really, really helpful to the United States in fighting Saddam Hussein and fighting the butcherous Assad regime in Syria. The United States has provided them air cover. That was called Operation Northern Watch in Iraq for many, many years. And here in Syria, the United States has had, depending on the accounts that you read, somewhere between 50 and about 2,300 troops in Syria. And part of what they've been doing is assisting the Kurds, who have been assisting us. And that's kind of kept the Turks out, because obviously the Turks don't want to come to blows with the United States. And so now with the United States pulling back, the Kurds are understandably extremely anxious, and they're getting attacked by the Turks. And I just a lot of reason to think that that not only our Kurdish allies in terms of their military and security forces are going to suffer, but just a lot of civilians, and so it's a very bad situation.
Dakota, I could have this conversation with you all afternoon, but I know how tight of a schedule you got. Anything else before I let you go get after it?
Hey, I would just mention this. When you think about the history of U.S. policy in the Middle East, one of the worst mistakes we ever made was immediately after the 1991 Gulf War, after Saddam had been defeated, the Shiites in southern Iraq and then the Kurds in northern Iraq started to give indications that they might rise up and knock off Saddam Hussein. President H.W. Bush was asked about it, and he basically said, yeah, it'd be great if they knocked off Saddam. And I think that they reasonably understood that the United States would have their backs and defend them, but we didn't. And they rose up against Saddam, and the United States just stood by the side while, Saddam's army just butchered the Kurds and butchered the Shiites. That did just deep damage to the reputation of the United States throughout the Middle East. And we've spent a lot of time trying to build up our capital again with the Kurds. And so it looks to me like we're at risk of repeating that. And it could just be very, very, very bad for the credibility of the United States as a reliable partner. I think also for our moral authority that we're going to allow civilians to be attacked in this way. So I think that people in Congress are right to, on a bipartisan basis, be urging the president to change course. Congress has got powers. It can legislate. It can withhold funds on things that the president wants as a way of leveraging him. But I think clearly we need a different approach.
Dakota, yeah, I'm glad you were able to get that out before I let you go here, because it emphasized this isn't just an at-whim thing. This has got a very long history. It's very complex. I fear
that's right.
I fear that. I mean, the decision's been made from reports right now when you have Turkey attacking through the air that, Kurds are asking for some air cover, no-fly zone, and the United States are refusing to do it. So I fear it's too late.
Yeah, well, and at some point, too, and this is the conversation for another time, but, we need to start reevaluating our relationship with Turkey. Turkey's been in NATO. They were a valuable ally against the Soviets and against the Russians, but they're edging into becoming an authoritarian state. We are at odds so often in the Middle East. And the United States has nuclear weapons in Turkey. And, it's a really, really legitimate question to ask, what are those nukes doing there? And what is really our relationship with Turkey as it slides into authoritarianism and as it buddies up with Russia? It's just getting more complex.
It is scary stuff at times. Dakota, I got more of your time than what I asked for, and I appreciate it. We'll do it again soon, all right?
That sounds great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Dakota Rudesill, he is an assistant professor of law down at The Ohio State University.